Okay, so in this video I'm going to give you lots of tips for doing the IELTS speaking test really well. And here's my first tip. You need to use things called fillers. Now, here are some examples of fillers. Okay. Well, to be honest, I guess that so, in fact, you know, that's a good question. Actually, that's a tricky question. Now, fillers don't really say anything in particular. They don't give content, they don't give information, but they get you extra time, they buy you time. They give you a second to think about what to say. And native speakers in English use these all the time. You probably use fillers in your own language all the time, sometimes without even noticing it. And we use them to give ourselves some extra thinking time, which is really important in the IELTS speaking test. But you need to try to use them naturally. You don't want to sound like a robot. You want to sound like a natural speaker. You also need to use things called linking words. These are really important as well. These are words that help join different ideas. For example, because, so that, also, in addition, plus, as well, to. So try to use linking words as well as fillers when you talk. It will really impress the examiner, will help you get a better band score for speaking. You should also paraphrase the examiner. You should try to paraphrase the questions asked in parts 2 and 3. What that means is rephrase the question asked by the examiner to show, first of all, that you understand it, and secondly, to show your range of vocabulary. So you change the examiner's words to your own words. So for example, maybe the examiner asks you, "Do you have any brothers and sisters?" And you can say, "Yes, I've got 3 siblings." Now, siblings is a synonym of brothers and sisters. So you're paraphrasing what the examiner asked you. Here's another useful tip. She's confused. She doesn't understand the question. If you do not understand the question, ask the examiner to explain the question to you. And some students don't do that because they think that if they ask the examiner to explain the question, it makes them look bad. But actually, it's a good thing to do because it gives you the opportunity to use language to ask for clarification. So you can use language like this. "I'm sorry, I don't quite understand the question." So it helps you use different language. Or you could say something like, "Do you mean?" So if you ask for clarification, that's a good thing. So what do you mean by, if you're not sure of a word, what do you mean by? And the examiner will tell you, but the examiner will also think, this candidate can ask for clarification. In part 1, remember to extend your answers. Do not just answer yes or no. Come up with a longer answer. So, for example, maybe the examiner says, "Are you studying at university at the moment?" Do not just say yes. Okay. You should say something like, "Yes, I'm studying economics at Beijing University. I've been there for just over a year." So you're extending your answer. In part 2, for the long turn, remember to make notes. before the part 2 long turn, use that minute to write down a list of notes or a mind map. You have 1 minute, remember, to plan. A lot of candidates don't do this. And during the 2-minute talk, their minds, their brains stop. They forget what to say. So make sure you plan your talk for 2 minutes. So you should also, in part 2, aim to talk for 2 minutes. Some candidates think that 1 minute is enough. It isn't. You should try to talk for 2 minutes. In part 3, it's very important to listen carefully to the question. You've got to think about what kind of question is the examiner using, what kind of question is the examiner asking, because the question might be asking you to predict something, to speculate about the future, to hypothesize. So listen carefully to the language used by the examiner so you know exactly what you're being asked. So here the examiner says, how might education change in the future? The examiner has used the word might and in the future. So you know you're going to try and speculate. So you need to maybe use the word might again. So I think children might use more mobile devices in the future. And that tells the examiner that you've understood the question properly. So to summarize those ideas, remember, use fillers, use linking words, paraphrase, ask for clarification, extend your answers, make notes for part 2, talk for 2 minutes in part 2, listen carefully to part 3, and one final tip, very important to do, but also quite difficult because you're quite nervous, is remember to smile at the examiner. So there are your exam tips for the IELTS speaking test.